Good morning. My name is Alex. I'm the CEO and co-founder here at Swolverine. We're an endurance athlete and active lifestyle brand. And this morning on podcast, we are joined by Alex Gazan, who is a Swolverine athlete as well as a rookie seasons CrossFit Games athlete. Alex, good morning. How are you?
Hi, good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. What have you been up to today so far?
I woke up, went to the
Good.
pool.
It's a good start.
Yep, went to the pool, and then now it's 9:30, so it's still morning, so haven't had a lot of time to do other things.
Right? It's like noon on the East Coast, and we're over here like, yeah, we just had our first coffee.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you train yet this morning?
I swam. I had
You
like a little
swam.
45-minute swim sesh.
Oh my gosh, how's that? I mean, being a little muscle muffin, do you sink or do you?
I try not to sink. I feel like when you swim with people that are like actual swimmers, it's like very different. Like my friends that are good swimmers, they think our workouts are like their warm-ups.
Oh my gosh, that's intense. And swimming's hard. I mean, it's definitely, an element that you have to be good at, especially at the level that you're at now, which is amazing, right? But, you have to learn how to bike and swim and do weird jump ropes and
Crossover
things are getting
downs.
crazy.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how are those for you? Do you ever just do those for fun? You're like, let me see if I can do this today.
Ever since they got announced at the games, Justin's been throwing them in for us, like every week, just like 5 minutes, like just to play around with. And like once you play around with them, they make more sense. But I could definitely like just throwing them random was a big shock for everybody at first.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's kind of, it challenges you doing little things like that. Like, okay, maybe you'll never even see them again, but you want to have kind of that attitude or that mental fortitude to be able to go into something that's really unfamiliar when you're on the floor, you have all these eyes on you and you don't know how to do something, or you just like haven't done it since you were 10.
Yeah, totally.
So tell me a little bit more about your accolades. I mean, we know you're rookie games athlete, but kind of tell me a little bit about your history. What have you competed at before, and how did you get to the games?
Yeah. Do you want me to go back like pre-CrossFit or just like CrossFit?
Let's go pre-CrossFit. I mean, what was little Alex like? What did little Alex do?
Little Alex was a big sports gal. Like I played lacrosse and was on like the ski team and kind of just like dabbled in a little bit of all the sports, but like main focus was lacrosse, especially through high school. And then I found CrossFit my junior year of high school, and that kind of like slowly took over everything else. But then in the CrossFit like space, as far as what I've competed in, I started off just doing like local comps my senior year of high school, which is where I met you guys. It was, I think, I was a senior and I competed at CrossFit Fort Vancouver, and you guys had a little booth there, and I think I met you guys there.
Yeah, we were babies too. We're just all a bunch of babies.
Yeah. And then from there, just like still local comps. And then my first semifinal was in 2020, and that was West Coast Classic. Or was that 2021? 2021. And that was West Coast Classic.
Nice. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And so for anyone who doesn't know, you're coming from Washington, right?
Yeah, Oregon. Very similar. Pacific Northwest. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. And now you're in Vegas, right?
Yes, ma'am. Big change.
Do you ever miss like just hitting people in sports? Like I feel like lacrosse is super physical. And lacrosse,
yeah. Oh, for sure. I feel like, there's not a lot of like that like sport aspect of CrossFit, like where you're just like aggressive in that way. So yeah, that'd be fun if there was something like
that. I'm gonna take you down. I would not want to be hit by you. Like I'm a pretty strong person, but like
yeah. No. Well, I mean, the girls' rules for lacrosse are a lot more passive than the men's side of the game. Like the girls, like there's not a lot of hitting. You get like penalties for it. The guys, though, is like football but with sticks.
Right. Well, that is awesome. So you were at West Coast Classic last year, and that was your first semifinal, right?
Yeah, it was.
How was that? I mean, was it nerve-wracking? Was it exciting? Was it?
Yeah, it was like all the things. I think that year in particular, like with the new format of like quarterfinals and after the Open, I really had no expectations, and I like squeaked into quarterfinals. I think I was like bottom 10 of that like I think it was 120 or 140, however many they took from quarterfinals. I was like in that bottom bracket. So like making it was kind of just like the cherry on top. And I really didn't have any expectations. I was like, I could either finish like bottom 5 or like maybe crack like the middle group. Like I had no clue. I still had some pretty big holes. Like I didn't even clear the 145 snatch bar during the ladder. Like definitely big holes, but it was such a good experience. And like I was able to have a lot of fun knowing that there was no expectations. Like I just wanted to compete and gain that experience. And I didn't have a like steady coach at that point. I was just following like a template program. So looking back, it definitely was like much more of a like, let's just go and do this kind of thing. Whereas like then Granite Games was a lot more like planned and felt a lot more like structured.
And Granite Games was this year, right?
Yeah.
As far as like your template program, were you living in Vegas during West Coast? I can't quite remember.
Yeah. So I moved to Vegas like kind of right during like the middle of the pandemic. I got married and my husband lived on here. So I didn't want to like get stuck being unable to travel. So like I followed him down here, and the gym that I started coaching at, everyone there followed Forged by Zeus, the template programming from Tim and Dave. And so I just like started doing that. And then I ended up meeting like Justin and Carrie and Bethany like later on. So I had met them during West Coast, but I wasn't working with Justin yet. And then we started working together after West Coast.
How did that conversation kind of come up? Did you approach him? Did he approach you?
I got really lucky as far as like, so I moved here and then all those guys moved here. And one of my friends from the gym had a connection to some athletes that trained around Carrie and those guys. And just kind of through mutual friends, I was able to introduce myself to Carrie and meet her and just kind of work out with her sporadically. And Justin would show up. I met him. And then I approached him after West Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people, especially being your age, I mean, you're 21, right? Newly-ish 21.
Yeah.
A lot of people your age, or just in general, right? Oh, going up to Carrie Pierce, going up to Bethany Shadburn, going up to even Justin, having that confidence to approach them, and not only approach them, but ask for something, right? Like say, hey, I'm Alex. I need help. I need guidance. I want to work with you. Or even just, knowing that in the back of your head, even if it's not the first thing that comes out. Where did that confidence come from? Or where did that humility come from? I mean,
I'll be honest, at first it was non-existent.
Hi, Alex.
Like I had some friends tell me like, hey, you need to go work out with Carrie. And I was like, I am not going to just show up there and be like, hey, I'm Alex. Like, I want to work out with you. I was way too nervous to do that. So just kind of like my, I guess, like wingman from the gym, like giving me kind of like a mutual connection. So it didn't feel so like abrupt was nice. And then like I kind of had like known Justin or like, met him a few times. So it felt much more natural to then ask him if he had room to take me on after like being there a little bit and having more interactions with him. But I also feel like looking back to, I wish I would have just like not been nervous, because you have the conversation and like the worst that happens is he says no, but like at least you put yourself out there.
Yeah. And that's a big piece of like asking for help, right? And like seeking out, okay, I have this goal, right? I want to achieve X, Y, and Z and don't necessarily know how to get there. And asking for help requires quite a level of humility or confidence, or, just recognizing I'm a beginner at something, or I'm somewhere in the middle of the pack and I don't know how to get where I want to go. Right.
Totally.
And a lot of times we get in our own way about that, right? Like we let fear or past experiences or traumas get into that. Do you think that, did you always want to be an athlete? Did you start CrossFit and just fall in love and were like, hey, there's team games, like I want to do this? Or was it kind of just something, I mean, I know your dad was a big piece of your story. And how did that kind of evolve over time into being 21 and a games athlete?
Yeah. I like wasn't really sure where I wanted to go, like my junior, senior year of high school, like what I wanted to do with my life, because everyone's like, oh, like where are you gonna go to college? What are you gonna do? And um, at that point, I like really didn't have like that strong, like, oh, I want to be a doctor. Oh, I want to do this. Um, but I started CrossFit and like fell in love with it. And then I remember I saw the documentary, like the Fittest on Earth one, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I want to do that. Like I didn't realize like how competitive it was, like outside of your like local box. And then I found out there was a teen division, so of course like I was like, okay, like now I'm really all in. But after that, like after the once I aged out of the teen division, there's that like weird limbo period where like if you're not a Haley Adams or a Mal O'Brien and like you didn't already make that jump into the individuals, you're kind of in this weird place of like you're not in a competitive level anymore because you're not in the teen division and you're not quite an individual. So I feel like that's kind of where the decision was made, like, hey, do you want to continue to pursue this, or like was it just fun and now you're going to move on?
Well, it's almost like starting over,
Yeah,
right? Really,
yeah,
when you get out of the teens division, it's like, okay, back to the bottom.
yeah, totally. And like I feel like I just kind of had this mindset of like I didn't really care how long it was going to take, but like I knew I wanted to make it to the games as the individual at some point. So it was just kind of like you have the opportunity to continue to train out of high school, so just like keep training, and as long as like you're loving it and having fun, like there's no reason not to. And that's kind of like what I've been doing, and now it's like all in. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you're a pretty talented athlete, right? It's not like you kind of just were like, I don't know how to do this, and I'm just going to kind of do it. And, I think there's this idea that everyone wants to go to the games and be on the floor, right? But there's also kind of the gap in knowledge or recognition. And I think social media plays into this about the work it takes to get there, right?
yeah,
And it's not glamorous and it's not mostly exciting and it's hard. And there's days I'm sure you've cried in the gym, or days that you've yelled in the gym from sheer excitement, right?
yeah.
Do you kind of have those fluctuating days, or are you pretty even keel? Like what, from a mindset standpoint, what is that like for you?
That's a good question. I try to stay really even keel just because training is so stressful as it is, like, and it takes so much out of your adrenal system. So if you let like stress or frustration or excitement like carry you up and down through training, um, it just takes all that much more out of your CNS when your CNS is already like struggling as it is. So I usually try to stay pretty even keel, especially at competitions. Like you can get excited, but then like bring it back down. If you're frustrated, like you get a couple minutes and then you shake it off. Yeah, I'd say like even keel is probably more my style in the gym.
Yeah. Well, there's kind of that quote that says, was it a bad 5 minutes or was it a bad 5 minutes that you milked all day? Right.
Yeah.
And like when you do that, I mean, your body responds to that. And like you're saying, your CNS and that fatigue and that stress and that chronic inflammation. I mean, exercise is great, but it still does cause inflammation. It still does cause stress within the body. Do you feel like that's something you have learned more recently, or is that something that's kind of come naturally to you? And have you had to be guided like with your coach? Like, hey, you got 5 minutes, you got 2 minutes, pull together, we're moving on.
I feel like it's kind of came naturally. I feel like I've always tried to approach CrossFit with like a bigger picture mindset. Like, yes, I'm all in, and yes, I care, and like I love it. But at the end of the day, if like CrossFit wasn't a sport tomorrow, like, am I okay with that not being like my identity? And I feel like that's kind of just been a huge factor in staying even keel. Because, like, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, there's times where like workouts are frustrating, or like you want to be ahead of where you are now, or like a workout doesn't go your way, and like it can be frustrating, but at the end of the day, like it's one workout out of like 300. Like there's just so much going on. So I feel like it's always kind of came natural. I've never like, I wouldn't call myself a hothead in the gym. Like I've never.
No.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes you don't have a mad bone in your body. I know they're in there somewhere, but they're
that's what we're working on. Justin's like, you need to be a killer, and I'm working on it, but I don't know.
Uh-oh, Benji's chiming in here. Benji, she's fierce. Oh, it's so funny. So oh man. So let's talk about just kind of approaching comparison, right? Do you ever feel like being a younger athlete and choosing the sport and choosing, that this is the direction you're taking your life, especially at 21? I'm sure, you have a lot of friends who are doing different things, who are in college, who are starting careers, who are, taking over or working in the family business. I don't know, doing all kinds of stuff, traveling. Do you ever find, and this question came from one of my clients who looks up to you as a younger athlete. Do you think that you ever miss out on going the traditional route? And why or why not?
That's a good question. I would say there is that element of like missing out, but it's only missing out if that's what you want. And like,
Oh,
I've never
bombs just dropped.
yeah,
I
like
love that.
I don't know. I've never, even in high school, like I wasn't really big into like the party scene as much as like, I don't know, like going out and like dating a ton of guys or like going to parties, like as much as that can seem exciting or this or that, like that never really like was fulfilling to me, like the idea of that. And then of course, like I'm married now, like I'm very happy being married and like my husband's awesome and like I love like sharing all this with him. And as far as like traveling and all that, like I get to do that with CrossFit. Like that's opened up doors to go meet people. So maybe I'm not meeting people in like a frat or a dorm, but like I'm meeting so many people all the time at different competitions and different gyms. And so yeah, I would say like I don't feel like I'm missing out, but I also didn't care about that other route as much as some might. So I think for that athlete that asked that question, like it's kind of just like if that's something you want, do it, because CrossFit's always going to be here. Like you can come do it when you're 25, 26. I just didn't care to do the other stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I say like bombs drop because you said something very big. It's not what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And Alex, I think some of your value system really comes from this humble confidence and this willingness to be vulnerable and from commitment. And whether it's commitment to yourself or to others or to this like bigger picture, I think this is one of the things or a few of the things that we saw in you. I saw in you when you're 17 and came up to the booth and we're like, I was like, hey, you're crushing the competition. You're like, yeah, it's so much fun and I love it. know? And you just that those values have been a really constant for you.
Thank you.
And I think at any age, let alone being 21. And I say these things, I'm not terribly older than you, but I say these things because a lot of people, aren't willing to commit to something, right? And a lot of times we end up putting like a haphazard or, even like a 3/4 or effort, or we could call it maybe the 1 foot out the door effort, because we're afraid of that thing, right? We already touched on that fear, trauma, whatever keeps you from yourself. How have you found that committing to things, even if you don't know what's going to happen next or what's going to happen in the long term, how do you feel like committing to things has changed the trajectory of your life and gotten you, the things or the people or the places or the values that you have now?
Yeah, I like that. I haven't ever looked at that in terms of like commitment. But I'd say like commitment, I guess, has changed my life in a big way. I was really afraid to get married, and like it took a lot of like reflection on myself as to why I was afraid, and it was all like irrational fears and like fear of judgment or fear of like missing out on things that I don't even care about. But like that commitment has paid off 10 times over and like still continues to pay off, just like sharing that. I guess moving was a commitment. I was afraid to move. I didn't want to leave the gym that I was at. I had a good crew there.
When you went from the Pacific Northwest to the desert,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's a big change all in itself.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess like, yeah, it just takes a leap of faith and then trusting that like, even if whatever commitment you decided to make doesn't work out, there's always like another option. Like life doesn't end if one commitment doesn't work. But I liked what you said about like 1 foot in the door, 1 out the door. Like if you live your life that way, then you're never really going to get anywhere. So it's better.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it's better to like take a leap of faith and then either be successful or fail than do nothing and then do nothing.
Yeah, well, and doing nothing is still a choice, right?
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have to make a hard choice no matter what, whether it's to do it or to not do it. And then if you sit there idle, then that really kind of sucks after time because then you're like, well, nothing changed, and you're like, well, then why did nothing change? And then, you know, did your parents let you quit sports or like let you quit things in life? Like
Um,
early on, or do you feel like you learned at an early age when you were giving your effort to something or your time to something when to give up, or do you feel like that was not really something that was present?
my parents were really, which actually ended up being a good thing, very hands off when in the sports or homework or things like that. Like it was all very like self motivated. Like they would be like, hey, like you have to do basketball or you have to do volleyball. It was
Mhm.
all like, hey, I want to do this. Okay, like then we'll support you. Like do that. Um, but I actually really appreciated that because then everything was like from my own like desires and like everything felt uh I want to say like everything felt a lot more earned. Like okay, like I chose to go to practice every day this week better because I wanted to, not oh my parents made me go to practice and I didn't want to and my like this sucks. So yeah, it all kind of I would say like came more just like naturally.
Mhm.
And as far as like
Would
not
you say that you're a pretty like independent person?
yeah, very much so. Sometimes to a fault.
Sorry, there was a lag.
Oh, yeah, I'd say I'm very independent. I'm almost to a fault. Like I'm working more on like something with like Jake and I is like I'll like just like make plans and like not talk to him about it or like oh like hey I want to go do this and like I'm working more on like including other people and like being more open to other people's like suggestions and things and yeah I'd say independent for sure.
Yeah, let's talk about Jake a little bit. How did you guys meet?
We met at the gym. I was 16 at the gym when I started, so I was 16. I thought he was way older than me, um, but we started talking and started dating. We were dating at the competition actually that we met at.
Oh, oh. How did you guys like? Okay, so let's go into it. Did he approach you or did you approach him? Like, how did this happen? Do you remember?
Met, like we shook hands. He was shirtless and sweaty. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's hot. Uh, but we were both actually like in relationships at the time, so it was kind of like it would have been disrespectful for either of us to like talk more than that, I guess.
Mhm.
But both of our relationships kind of fizzled out, and then all the coaches at the gym really kind of played matchmaker, like, hey, you guys should do some bicep curls or sandbag carries after class, like. So we kind of just started doing that, and then he had asked me what I felt like were dates, but I still thought he was in a relationship. So like we'd go get food, he'd pay, but there was no like flirtation beyond like a friendly conversation. There was no like touching, like nothing. So it was just like this long period of like, does he like me or are we just friends? And like I would say like 3 months later, like we finally kissed and then like started dating.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
How long ago did you guys get married?
We got married in 2020, so it'll be 3 years in March.
Nice. Oh my gosh. How did he propose?
Oh, that's a good question. He proposed.
You're like, I don't know.
Like,
It just happened.
well, there's like two stories. There's like the real one, and then like the one he tried to do. He
I like
proposed.
Jake.
He like went out to dinner and like went to Circus Soleil, and he like stood up, and I saw like the ring in his pocket, like the box.
Oh no.
And so like that whole night, I was like, oh gosh, like he's gonna propose, and he never did. And I was like, oh. But then we got back to like the house and like he ended up proposing that night. And then like just inside. And then the next day we went to dinner and he had like already like planned with them to like have a ring brought out in the cake or something, but he had already proposed, so he just did it again like for fun.
Oh, I love that.
Over New Year's, which was really fun. Like this was like right before the pandemic, so Vegas was like super like full and busy, and it was like New Year's Eve. It was really pretty.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. The weather wasn't 120 degrees.
Oh gosh, it's finally cooling down. It's been like 95 and it feels so good.
Oh my gosh, I bet. Is Jake the
I'm like
same?
in a sweater and it's like
It's 95 degrees and you're in a waffle.
yeah. Uh,
That is amazing. Is Jake the same age as you?
no, he's 23. 23. Yeah.
So like 2 years older than you.
Mhm.
Nice. Well, that is very cute. Is it weird, like with social media, being married at a younger age?
I was really nervous, honestly, at first, just like fear of judgment from like maybe people in high school or like just adults that knew me. They're like, "Oh, you're so young." I haven't felt any sort of negative feedback from it, honestly. Like everyone's been super supportive and um, yeah, it's been really good. So I haven't had anything bad from social media.
That's good. Don't
Mm-hmm.
let up. No bullies. Come on.
No bullies.
We're all here to see each other grow.
Yeah.
Let's get into the 2022 CrossFit Games season.
Yeah.
So last year, West Coast Classic, semifinals, quarterfinals, that kind of thing. You linked up with a coach. You got started with Underdogs. You connected with Justin. You're surrounded by some really amazing people, right? Who I think have really attached to you because you're just a really good person, which is fun. So let's talk about it from top to bottom. Starting in the open, what were some of the mentalities and approaches you had to the beginning of the season?
I mean, the nice thing about the new structure, open doesn't. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but like the stakes aren't as high in the open because like essentially for people that don't know, you have to like qualify top 10% out of like thousands and thousands of people. So, like the room for error is a lot larger than it is in necessarily like quarterfinals or semifinals. So like the mental side of the open wasn't anything like crazy. It was more just like, hey, we're like these workouts are like training, like do it hard, do it with everyone. It was really fun to like do it with the crew. And then I feel like where like the mental side and like being more strategic and all this stuff with workouts kind of came in was quarterfinals.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like already having kind of squeaked into semifinals, did you feel more confident about getting into semifinals this year, or did you have some nerves around that?
I had a lot of nerves. I'm very much just because you did it once doesn't mean it's given to you a second time.
Yeah.
And so like I never once was like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna make it to semifinals. Like I'd never assumed that. I mean, I of course wanted to and believed that like I had the athletic ability, but I was never like, oh, I'm in. Especially because you don't know what the workouts are going to be. Like you don't know what bias they're going to favor, like if you're going to have big holes or anything like that. So like with quarterfinals, like every workout was very much like maximize your points, like don't leave anything on the table. Luckily, I loved all the workouts in quarterfinals. I thought they were really fun. And then I made it, obviously. I just didn't expect to place so highly, which was a good mental shift for me going into the rest of the season.
Yeah, totally. You touch on something, that I think a lot of people forget is that, and myself included, and maybe you, is that fitness is a gift, right? Like it's a privilege to be able to go into a gym or go into an exercise environment, whether it's outside or at home, and to be able to move our bodies and do things like that, right? And I don't know, it's just kind of an interesting thing. I think a lot of people, especially with the idea of wanting to go to the games, put so much of the pressure on, oh, is the workouts, oh, is the structure, oh, is this. And, yesterday I talked with Ariel Lowen about the fun in fitness, right? And the fun of being able to go in and be there with your pals or be there by yourself and just move, right?
Something like along those lines about like it being fun. Like I feel like it's so important to have a good training environment and like enjoy the process, because like a huge eye opener to me this year was like I've spent years now, right, like looking up to the CrossFit Games. Like I want to make it to the games, and I made it, and it was this amazing experience. But it was 5 days, and then it was over. Like all these years, so like 365 times however many, like all those days compared to 5 days, like you have to enjoy all that, because 5 days goes by so fast, and then it's like then no one cares. Like the month after the CrossFit Games, like I mean I don't mean that in like a bad way, but like no one really cares.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make sure you're enjoying life outside of just the games and like enjoying training and enjoying all that.
Yeah, I think that's a really big good point too, right? With small, medium, and large size goals. I mean, you're a coach as well, right? You coach nutrition. Do you coach CrossFit too, or just nutrition?
Yeah, I do some classes at the gym that we like train at. So it's like Camp Ryan. We have like boot camp and CrossFit. So I coach a couple of night classes.
Nice. Yeah. And so working with people, the goals are the big things, and even with yourself, and being present and intentional with what you're doing enables you to be present and in the moment. And if you have kind of like that feeling like time is just like flying by, it's slipping by, you're not in control, it's like, well, how present are you? Are you looking at the past and what you did or didn't do? Or are you anxious for the future and what's going to happen, what you may or may not have control over? Right?
Yeah, totally.
I know that you had a really cool post, and Justin had a really cool post about kind of your mental shift at Granite Games. Will you tell me a little bit more about that and when that kind of kicked in?
Yeah. So I'll kind of like backtrack. So the start of the season, like last year, so like around this time last year, like September, October, we kind of just like chatted and like obviously I was like, yeah, I want to make the games. And he's like, yeah, I think you can. Like, you're obviously a good athlete, but like, I don't know when that will be. So I think if we just like train smart, we'll just kind of like keep chipping away at your weaknesses. Like, it's going to happen. I don't know if this year, but like, in the next couple of years, like, we'll get you there. And that was kind of our conversation about a year ago. And then like the Open came around, quarterfinals came around, and then all of a sudden it was like this possibility of, oh, like it could happen this year. But in quarterfinals, like I had like the hard thing for me was like not allowing myself to believe it was just a fluke, because there was a bench press workout, and like bench press is kind of like an anomaly for me. Like it's just one of those things that like I'm freakishly good at for no reason. Like it's just like
bench. Tell the people, give the people the goods.
I have a very high bench press. But then there's like a couple other workouts that I like were definitely my wheelhouse, like high skill, GHD, ring muscle ups. Like that's really good for me. And there wasn't like super crazy high volume, like chest to bar, toes to bar, which are more like weaknesses for me. So it just like, even though I placed really well, like it was kind of like this moment of like, yeah, I placed really well, but like, is that a reflection of my overall fitness, or did I just get lucky with those workouts?
Well, there's like some conflict, I wouldn't say conflict, but discussion about that, right, in the industry about our semifinals, our quarterfinals workouts, even a representation of what happens at the games, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
do they accurately reflect? And like there's a lot of conflict, I think, with people's opinions. I will say, I'm not going to say there's conflict, but people's opinions about the LCQ, or you know what I mean, the last champion.
And I think that's something that's always going to be there. Like there's always going to be people that don't like programming, no matter what it is. People don't like the programming at the games, like every other year. So
there's always something to complain about if you want to.
Yeah. My opinion is like you're either fit or you're not. Like no matter what the workout is, like you just have to like do it. So, but at that point, so I placed 12th in quarterfinals, and that was kind of when Justin was like, okay, like I believe you can make it. Like you just have to believe. And I was kind of like, okay, I understand, and like, but I don't know how to apply that. Like I get what you're saying, but like if I don't actually feel it, like I don't know how to do that. And so we just kind of kept training and trained really hard, and semifinals came around, and going into semifinals, like I honestly didn't know if I was going to make it. Like I really was like, you know, like if I did, that'd be amazing and I'd be so excited, but out of fear of failure, I didn't want to set those expectations for myself because I didn't want to be disappointed. And I kind of just was like, well, like let's go into semifinals and like let's just see what happens. And the first workout was the thruster handstand walk, and I think I got like 11th, and so I was kind of like, okay, like it's not bad. That's not like making it to the games, but that's not bad. And then the lifting, the complex, I ended up getting second, and that was kind of like oh wait, like I'm still in like the top 5, like okay. But then it was day 2, so Saturday after the mashup chipper, which was like probably one of the hardest workouts I've ever done, just the sheer volume and like nastiness of it. I ended up getting third, and that was like when the light kind of came on, like, okay, you can make it, and like you are fit enough, and it wasn't just a fluke, but like now you have to just like go for it. And yeah, that was kind of like the shift. Like I'm much more of a I got to see it to believe it. So I had to prove it to myself before like I really just like said it.
Well, and in a way too, that's commitment as well. Commitment to the unknown, commitment to believing in yourself. And I mean, Colton had a pretty, teammate Colton Mertens had a pretty similar experience at Granite Games, where it was like, what if I don't like go to the bar? What's going to happen if I don't? You know what I mean? Like, I already know what it's like to let go. I already know what it's like maybe to give up or to stop or to rest. I know what that produces. What I don't know is what happens when I fully give in and when I fully lean into this opportunity or this workout or this movement alone. And that seems pretty similar to you, where the light starts to go on and you start to realize like, oh snap, like I am here on purpose. I am here for a reason. I deserve to be here. I've earned my right to be here. And I think that can really be applied to a lot of things in life, right? Not just semifinals, not just the games, not just fitness. And being able to be out there, and everyone has their own individual journey that they walk and with this, right? And these personal struggles. And no matter what level of athlete or professional you are, or just pure person in general, we all have these human emotions, and we all experience fear, and we all experience, talking ourselves out of things. And the inner voice, that little negative voice, sometimes it's really loud and it just doesn't go away, but it's like, well, what do you listen to? Do you believe in yourself and your potential, or do you believe in your inability to be there? And that can be that make it or break it, from hanging onto the bar to finishing those rope climbs to that sprint. And what was it like to go through that event for you, where the light came on and then to get over the finish line?
Which event?
Just kind of like when you started to realize like, oh snap, I'm here on purpose.
Yeah. So after the chipper, we had the speed chipper that evening, which was probably like the workout I was like least excited for, just because it's like one of those workouts you just know it's gonna hurt. Chest to bar were like definitely a work in progress, and so I just was like I was tired, and like that was probably like the worst mindset I had of any workout that weekend, just because I was like tired and I like wasn't excited for it. So that one was kind of just like get through it. And then the last 2 days, or the last 2 workouts of Sunday, the earlier workout was just kind of like a grind. Like you bike, you run, you push the sled, you do burpees, and there's nowhere really to like, if you can't do a snatch, you can't do a snatch, but like you can always do a burpee, you can always run, you can always do that. So that one was just like, for me, it was like, hey, you want this, like how bad do you want it? And I finished that event, and I think at that point I was in 6th overall. And I was really excited for the rope climb workout. So like I had that workout to like kind of like, okay, like you're still in it. That workout's going to be good for you. Like have fun with this. And like, it was a good workout to end on.
Yeah, absolutely. Was it neat did you get a chance to talk to Chelsea Nicholas when you were there? I mean, I know you guys know each other from the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. Cool. Cause I remember seeing her, and I think she competed with, I want to say Betsy. I could be wrong, but the girl from Fort Vancouver that she competed with. And I remember like she was competing against Reagan and Reagan's partner Jess. And like, I was like, wow, like they're really good. And like, I was 16 or 17 at that point. And I was like, they're so strong. So it is like really cool to like
Chelsea's very strong.
Yeah, to see it come full. Like, oh wow, like I'm competing next to her and with her, and obviously she's super sweet. So yeah, definitely very cool.
You have anyone that's like your favorite to compete against?
There's a lot of girls that I love like competing with because it's just so fun. Like Danny Spiegel's super sweet, like super lighthearted, and like makes things really fun. Ariel Lowen was a blast at the games, like super sweet. There's a lot of girls that are just like very lighthearted and fun. I wouldn't say like there's someone I'm like, oh, I want to be on the competition floor next to so and so, like because it's just always
no.
Yeah. And like all the people that I train with are super fun to like compete against and like be in the gym with. So yeah, I don't know. There's not really anyone I don't like. It's really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. But then there's kind of like that moment where you zone in, right? Where you're in the corral and you're like, it's me versus me. It's time to stay in my lane. Like it's not even about the personalities. It's not about the social medias or the sponsors or anything. It's just that you're all going out there to, express your ability and pursue your personal goals that absolutely have nothing to do with anyone else, right? So, I mean, you chose Vegas because of Jake. Why did you choose Underdogs? Like, was it just mainly the connection and introduction that happened after semifinals last year? And if, it is kind of deeper than that, how does Underdogs separate themselves or the coaching program from other programs that are out there? I mean, a lot of people have a lot of options, right? And even if you were in Vegas, you don't have to follow Underdogs. So,
yeah. I mean, it kind of just like made a lot of sense to me. Like, if I have the opportunity to train with these really high caliber athletes and under a coach who's trained many games athletes, like I just felt like it'd be kind of silly not to take that opportunity and learn from the best of the best. And like since having those conversations with Justin, like I've like grown to like love him and his family like so much. And I think what I really value about Underdogs, like granted, I can't speak for other camps. Like I haven't really trained anywhere else. But like the things that like I feel like really stick out to me are just that it's very it feels like a family. And if I were to call Justin or Ashley or whoever, like and be like, hey, like my car's dead, like they would come help me. Or like, hey, like I'm having a really crappy day at home, like my grandma, like something happened with her, like they care about you beyond your athleticism. And all of our training partners do too. Like we all obviously want the best for each other and like want to push each other, but we're all like there to support each other outside of just fitness. And like I think that's huge for me. And then also like on the fitness side of things, like Justin's obviously very smart, and something I really appreciate about him as a coach is like he just like kind of calls it how it is, both good and bad. And so like he's not afraid to like tell you what you need to work on, but he's also not gonna just like give you fake compliments or like fake kudos. Like he's going to tell you what you're doing well at, and he's also going to tell you where you need to get better and like love you the same the whole time. And like that's really nice, like having that like dependable feedback and like dependable coaching.
But I think there's a level of finesse with that. I mean, you're a coach, I'm a coach. Like there's this level of, keeping people accountable and honorable or like honest. I guess would be a better way to say that. But also extending kind of that emotional tie, like you see Justin and you see like the strong leadership qualities, but then he's not afraid to like get down on a knee and like pat your back of your head when you're, in your feels and in the dog shit of a workout, and you're like beating yourself to shit and he's there for you.
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel like that's relatable? Do you feel like that's a kind of a quality that makes him a unique coach as well for you? Or is that relationship dynamic different across different athletes?
I feel like he's pretty like he's really good at like morphing to whatever an athlete needs, right? Like with the boys, I'd say he's a little more like fired up with them, like let's fucking go, like like that with us, but maybe not as much like the girls. Yeah, so I'd say he's like pretty like he's really good at just like seeing what an athlete needs. And then the team's also growing. Like we have Kiefer now too, who's Justin's like assistant coach, and he's really awesome. He's probably more like the even keel like emotions relative to Justin, but like he's very analytical. So like if he's watching you lift, like he'll give you a cue like every time, or he's like looking at like the big picture of programming and stuff like that. So like together, like it's really nice to have both of them. And then obviously like I also learn a lot from all the athletes that we're with. So like Scuds has been doing it for a long time, and she's like always sharing her tips and tricks of the trade. And like Matt, my training partner, like he's really good at Olympic lifting and really good at some things, and like he's never afraid to like share his knowledge. And that also is like super nice that we're all just like trying to make each other better, rather than like I have this trick with rope climbs but I'm not going to share it because like I want to be better. Like we're all just pushing each other, and that's really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something about going beyond athleticism. I think a lot of people might not correlate that in the gym environment, especially in a training environment with a lot of really good athletes and different personalities. You and Matt have really created a pretty synergistic bond as training partners, I'd say, at least from what I've been able to observe. And watching you guys support each other at Granite Games and through semifinals and that kind of journey. How important is it to have people around you that are like in a training partner sense, right? A lot of people train by themselves. A lot of people train in a training environment. Why is that environment important for you, and how has that helped you be successful as an athlete?
Yeah. I think there's like pros and cons to both. I think it's important to be able to push yourself when you need to, and it's important to be able to have times where like, hey, like this bike workout is like 80%, like I don't need to compare myself to anyone else. Like I'm gonna do it on my own and just like feel good about my fitness. But then there's also times where like it's wonderful to have people like, hey, like I was not feeling that great, but I can see like they're pushing hard. I want to catch them. Like if they can do it, I can do it. Um, and then also like the emotional support of like, say we go into heats and like we're watching one group, like you can kind of tell when people are either giving up on themselves or like if you know they have more and it's like, hey, like pick up the bar, like you can do it. Or like the other day, like Matt like came up to me and he was like, hey, like are you gonna let her beat you? Like let's go. Like because he had already gone. And just like little things like that where you kind of learn each other and like learn what pushes you, and like that's really valuable. And honestly it's just more fun. Like it's so much more fun to like lift with the girls and like we do a set and then we can like chit chat, or like, okay, you did 5 reps, like okay, I'm gonna try to do 6, like, and it's like a healthy like competitiveness, but it makes it so much more fun. Whereas like if you're just killing yourself day in and day out, like that's a lot of your time in solitude, which is fine if that's what you love, but there's so, I don't know, I feel like that's a lot of like too much time alone and too much time just like by yourself.
Yeah, and it kind of goes into that bigger picture that you talked about. What would happen if CrossFit went away tomorrow? What would
Yeah.
happen if social media went away tomorrow? Who am I, and what are my values, and what do I root into? And that's also a really important piece of figuring out who you are and what drives you and what motivates you. Right? Is like, if all of this was gone, what am I left with? And do I even like myself? And do I even like,
Yeah.
or like if fitness was gone, do you like the people you're even around? Right?
Yeah. Like train by yourself all the time and like don't have personal relationships and like you get hurt, like who's in your life to like be with you when you're not doing CrossFit? Like I don't know, I think about that stuff a lot. And like you said, I think that's where the bigger picture stuff is super important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you're a pretty positive person. I mean, it seems like you're in a really positive environment. Is there ever conflict amongst those groups? Is there ever, do you run into kind of the negative things about training with people much? Or is it more so you guys all are kind of on the same page to foster that environment? And that's like the main goal?
I think like right now we have a really good like just overall group that like wants that. We all want positivity and we want to like be good for each other. And of course, like there's gonna be days where like someone doesn't feel good or they're having a bad day, and like, but I think we're all good at like reading each other and like, okay, like hey, like let's lift this person up, like let's get them like back to where they want to be. And Justin, I think now is like very deliberate and like who comes to the camp, and he's just trying to like if people want to come train, like now it's like, okay, like are they going to be a good fit? Are we going to all be positive? Like, and it's really nice. Like I don't think there's really much negativity at all. It's been really good.
Yeah, that's rad. What role has Carrie Pierce played in your journey?
A lot, like a lot. Yeah, I guess like from the first time I met her, like I had no idea what to expect. Like if it was just gonna be like, hey, yeah, she's gonna let me like work out with her, and like that's that. But she was so nice from like the first time, and like genuinely was like asking about myself and like asking about questions like to me, and just like you could tell she was like really good at just having a conversation with you, but also like making you feel like important and cared for. And I worked out with her a few times, like just sporadically after like I'd met her, and she just like, yeah, like come back anytime, and was really inviting. And I ended up kind of just like committing to training with her a bit before she did Rogue Invitational last year after the games. And a lot of people were still on their off season, so like Bethany was still gone, Danielle was still gone, and it was just a lot of time where like it was just her and I. And she kind of just like mentored me a lot. Like watching her do accessory work, where like maybe most women would choose like a 30-pound dumbbell, like she was grabbing a 50 for her like rows or whatever the workout was, and just like watching her work ethic, like that was super huge. And but beyond her athleticism, right, like past that was like her ability to want your success aside from her own. Like she was like willing to help you even though like she's your technically like competitor, you know. And now like especially when she retired, like she was just an open book, like, hey, like anything that you need or want, like let's talk, like I want to help you. And yeah, so she's been in the gym a lot more because I think she's thinking about doing a little bit of extracurricular competing
That's
this
fun,
year.
right? Like it goes back to that mentality of like, just have fun with it. And sometimes you do it and sometimes you don't. And sometimes you're in it and sometimes you're not. And that's when you remove that pressure from yourself to just like be there, then it's a lot more enjoyable, right?
She's and her like work ethic is so good. So it's a really good example for me. And like after Justin and I had our post games conversation, he was like, essentially, if you want to be in the top of the sport, like when we're done talking, like I want you to call Carrie and I want her to tell you what it takes, like outside of the gym, like the decisions you have to make aside from just working hard in the gym, like your sleep, your nutrition, your like, are you going to go hang out with a friend or are you going to go home and chill, like things like that. So she's a really good example for those things.
Yeah. And how do you feel like those things outside of the gym foster your growth or hinder your growth?
Yeah, I mean, I love sleep and like I like eating well, so that stuff kind of like just came naturally. Like it's not hard for me to like want to go to bed. And I mean, I don't like feeling sick, so like eating like good food's not hard. I like eating, so I can usually eat enough for like more than. For me, the hardest part is there's no balance in the sense of like you can't just go like rock climbing with friends, or you can't just like go on a hike on a Sunday because that takes away from your recovery. You can't go on a late date night because you do need to go to sleep. So when you talked about earlier, like missing out on those life experiences, like the college route and things like that, I would say like that's the one area where you're like, okay, like I am sacrificing that stuff right now. Like going to, I don't know, like a late date night or things like that. But I have so much time for that. So in like 5 years, if I'm done competing, like I can do all that then. And I'd say that that's the only part that's hard. Everything else feels pretty natural.
Yeah. Well, and that's that decision between, what do I want now versus what do I want then, or what is always going to be there and what's not, right? What are constants and what are variables in our life, and taking opportunities and creating opportunities, not expecting things to just kind of fall in your lap, right?
Totally.
Speaking of things outside of the gym, what does your daily nutrition look like?
Yeah. So I used to track macros pretty like sticklery or religiously. But then I found like it just like took so much mental energy from me to track all the time. And I found that I just like was kind of always at an imbalance, either like not eating enough because I was afraid of like eating more than what my macros were, or like forcing myself to like be stuffed just because like I felt like I needed to eat. So like once I kind of like learned portions and like I know what 30 grams of protein looks like, I know what 50 grams of carbs of rice looks like. I kind of stopped tracking, but I'd say like I eat over 3,000 to 3,500 calories a day, like lots of food. What does that say? Sticklery, the active. I love that. So I'd say like breakfast, like I've been on a big waffle kick. So I make like waffles, and then this sounds weird, but you know when people make protein pancakes and they put like protein powder in the pancakes? I think that's like, I think it makes them dry. I take like the chocolate whey. I take the chocolate whey and I mix it with like peanut butter and put it on top. Yeah. And it's so good. So I've been making those. I eat a lot of waffles with that. And then like in training, like carbs. I've been really trying to be diligent about like taking like beta-alanine, the creatinine, and like the citrulline. Is it malate or malate? Because I always say it wrong, and then I look at it and it's always different.
Yep, that T's at the end. So malate. And it's like scary word, right?
Okay,
but
gotcha.
It's really just, it's like watermelons and apples. So L-citrulline here, and yeah, malic acid is where malate.
Yeah, I've been trying to like take that stuff like really like consistently, and I do that during training, and then dinner's usually just like lots of meat, taters, and veggies, and yeah, I say like I eat pretty much everything. I'm not really like that picky.
I mean, hitting like
for me, it's just a lot of
calories is a pretty significant amount, especially at your stature. I mean, how tall are you? How much do you weigh? Give the people the deets.
Yeah, I'm like 5'6". I weigh anywhere from like 150 to like 157. Like I fluctuate. I'd say quite a bit. But I also don't weigh myself very often. For most ladies, I don't think you should. It's kind of like a mind game.
I agree. Second that one.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not a huge. I wouldn't say I'm a huge person. I mean, like I have a lot of muscle mass, but I'm not huge. And I think a big takeaway for me, like why I'm eating so much now, is after the games were over, I realized, and like I wasn't working out as much. I was still able to eat a lot of food without feeling full or seeing any changes in my body composition, and that was like a big indicator to me of like, oh, you probably weren't eating enough if like you're eating this much still and not seeing any changes. Like your body was probably just adapting to not having as much food. And so now I'm like really trying to eat a lot more, and especially with volume going up, like it's not going to hurt me. So
yeah, absolutely. And you being a coach, I mean, you know, a lot of people, men and women, are very afraid to eat, and eating for performance is very different than eating for aesthetics, right?
Yeah, I feel like the whole sport of CrossFit, like it's so hard because there's this like really blurry line where people think that you're like the healthiest person ever, right? They're like, oh my gosh, like you're so ripped, you're so healthy. But like we're doing like 3 to 4 really intense workouts. Like we're eating like Rice Krispie treats, like cereal. And it's this balance of like, it's not necessarily for health, it's for performance. And like to be healthy while competing, you have to eat all that stuff. And it's different than someone that's just trying to like eat healthy and go to a class once a day to like stay moving and be healthy in that regard.
Yeah. I don't know how you feel about it, but I always like kind of, it doesn't grind my gears, but when it's like, what do you eat in a day? Well, good to see what somebody eats in a day, right? Like what Alex eats in a day. And here's what 3,500 calories for a 5'5" woman looks like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but there's also the kind of idea of this like copycat mentality, right? Where if I copy this, I'm going to be like Alex. I'm going to look like Alex. And it's like, no, but you can use that as a tool to say like, this is what it takes for her. Now, what does it take for me? Right.
Totally.
And can really come in handy. I mean, even with fitness.
Yeah. That's why I stopped tracking, because I would see other people's macros and I'd freak out and like one way or another, like, oh, am I not eating enough? Am I eating too much? Like, why do they have this ratio of carbs when I have this rate? Like, there's just so much that, like you said, it is so different person to person. And yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any like favorite snacks or treats, or do you do cheat days, or do you just kind of eat as you go?
So with like eating a lot of calories, I feel like I at least have like one meal a day that I would consider as more like a treat, just because to get the volume in of food without feeling super bloated. Like if you try to eat 3,000 to 3,500 calories on like rice, potatoes, and like you're gonna feel not good. So like I said, like the waffles is a really good way for me to get calories in, because like between the protein, the peanut butter, the waffle, and then like I'll either put like berries or like whipped cream on top. Like that's like a solid meal. Yeah, I don't really do cheat days. Like if I want ice cream, I eat ice cream. If I want French fries, like I'll eat French fries. And I feel like it's a lot more for myself. Like some people like more like regimented, and then like on Friday night they're gonna have like a fun meal. For myself, like I'd rather just kind of eat normal, and then if I want something, I want it. It's just more like a natural like ebb and flow.
Yeah.
If that answered your question.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was talking yesterday with Ariel, and she's talking about cupcakes and cookies and how it's like if you cut them out and you restrict, you want them more, and then you overeat them, right?
Totally.
And it's like, and then talking to Leo, and he's like, I got to eat Snickers because I just need calories most times. And he's like, I don't eat this every day because it's like super fun, or, if I wasn't training, this probably wouldn't happen. But you got to do what you got to do, and you got to be flexible with it, right? And lenient with yourself along the way. It's not as easy as just like, don't color in the lines, and that's a lot what like diet culture teaches us, is that do this, don't do that, the all or nothing mentality. And it's whether you're a games athlete like Alex, or you're somebody who's new to just listening to your body, establishing that connection between the brain and the body comes from flexibility, and it comes from trial and error. It doesn't come from, this black and white mentality.
Totally. Yeah, I love that.
Well, I think that, you're in a really good spot. You've done amazing things so far. You're 21. You're inspiring people. People look at you and they're like, how do I become like Alex? You're a great person. Really exciting to hear about the environment that you're in and the people that you have to look to and your mentors. So are you, I guess, kind of what's next, right? So you came off of the games, kind of had a little bit of off season. Are you going to stay in off season? Or are you going to do Wadapalooza, Rogue? You guys are hosting the Celis games?
Yeah. I'm not going to do Rogue. I looked at the qualifiers, and I was not ready for that when they were happening. I was like, no, I took like 2-3 weeks off. Like those are nope. So I didn't do that.
How about no?
Yeah. I think Rogue will be so fun, but I kind of am using that as like a reward competition. Like when I earn a spot there, like then I get to compete. Like when I like get invited, like it's kind of one of those like motivating things to look at. But yeah, I'm gonna do the Zalos games. That's gonna be in Vegas in November. You can still sign up if people are listening. It'll be really fun. Gonna do that. There's like a local comp in Arizona I'm gonna do just because I've done it for a few years and I really like the people and they invited me back out there. But then yeah, Wadapalooza, I'm gonna do that as a team.
Yeah.
And then really I think that's it until the Open. I think just Wadapalooza as a team, and then I wanted to do Dubai, but Justin said no. It's too much travel.
It's intense.
It's a lot of travel, which makes sense. So yeah, that's really it. So I think Wadapalooza will be really fun. And with the new format, like since there's 2 days of individual, then 2 days of team, it'll be fun to like get to like go to sponsor booths and like go spectate and like also be a part of it outside of competing.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially at Wadapalooza, I mean, it's really fun in the vendor area, right? And then just like walking around and watching other competitions. There's so many different divisions.
Are you guys going to go this year?
Oh man. I would love to. I'm going to say probably not.
Yeah, fair enough. It's a lot.
It's been interesting. I mean, I think from a business standpoint, with the lingering effects of the pandemic, you know what I mean, hitting the industry and supply chain issues and things like that. We also we initially set out to have this be our first event year back, but instead we decided to launch 6 different products. And so we got really excited about those. And then halfway through the year, we're like, okay, well, maybe next year,
Yeah.
But we do have, we launched the we have the intra coming. So I got to get you some samples of that when you send your next order out. But the intra is going to be really cool with some EAs in there. A lot of focus, kind of going back to the idea of what you're seeing with being very intentional about, hitting your calorie goals or hitting your performance goals without feeling like heavy or, overloaded, right? So that's going to be a really nice addition. We have that post coming out. So those are going to be closer to Black Friday, most likely. They're all in production. We also have mint chocolate chip coming, right? I know you've been asking that one for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think I'll probably be there just to support you guys and just say hey and get out to Florida. It's really fun, and it's a nice opportunity to see other people in the industry, right?
Yeah, and like if you're gonna go to Florida anytime in the winter when it's freezing in the Pacific Northwest, yeah.
Highly recommend. I don't recommend though, the first time I went to Wadapalooza, I had 4 layovers because it was quite a few years ago, and it was like all the money was sinking into the business, and I was like, what's the cheapest possible flight I can get?
Oh man,
I used to like 3 different airports.
I used to do that too, but then you look back and you're like, man, that $100 that I saved, I could have just like worked instead of been in the airport.
It's so true. Yeah, it's terrible.
I used to do that big time. In high school, I did a lacrosse travel team, and I didn't even look at the flights. I literally would just look at the cheapest one and like book it, even if it was like $20. And I hate myself for it. I had so many flights. So I feel you. I feel you big time.
I know. See, we live and learn the little things. Spend that extra $100 on your flight.
Maybe you can make it out to Vegas soon. We'd love to have you.
Oh, well, we have a video shoot in October.
Are you coming for that?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Sweet.
So we'll hang. We'll sit. We'll get you to bed on time, I promise.
No. Sounds good.
All right, Alex. Well, for everyone out there, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can watch the Swole Friends podcast live. We also are streaming on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so make sure to subscribe on there for the audio. We always post there. Make sure to follow Alex. Her handle is Alex, AlexGazan_. So pop on there, give her some nod of encouragement as she heads into her 2023 season. If you're going to be in Florida, try to connect with her. She's an amazing, radiant person, and when you get to meet her in person, so you won't regret it. Alex, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you, and I think you are just the bee's knees. So
thank you for having me. It was really fun. It was nice.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll see you in October, okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
All righty. Have a good day.
Do I just